that for me, I think when you're a nurse or a doctor, not that, that there's not, the spirituality isn't there beforehand, but it's all about the physical, right?
Right.
And for me, it's the other, you start in the mental and emotional and spiritual healing. When you clear up that stuff, the physical does clear up, because I have seen that time and time again with, the raw food and everything. Great. Like, people have healed themselves, but the condition keeps coming back until you go into the root of the issue that was causing the problem in the first place. That's the mental and emotional stuff.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Sharice Williams Show, the only podcast created for the highly conscious, high-impact nurse-turned-entrepreneur looking to create, launch, and scale a wildly profitable holistic health coaching and consulting business from a place of ease and flow, while also optimizing their wellness and vitality naturally. I'm so excited, you guys. Oh, I am so excited. And the reason why I'm so excited is because I have the most amazing guest to share with you today. And because, I only bring the best of the best on the show. And so today we're going to be talking about, spiritual healing for the nursepreneur, right? Spiritual healing for the nursepreneur. And we are going to be having this conversation with none other than the Alissa Cohen. And so let me tell you about Alissa, you guys. She is so phenomenal. First of all, she is a internationally recognized author, speaker, educator. She is truly a pioneer in the raw food industry. And she has, when I tell you, so many gifts and talents and ways of healing, from polarity therapy to cranio-sacral and regression therapy, tantric coaching, energy and shamanistic healing. She's an herbalist, a nutritionist, a raw veganist, a homeopath, a fitness trainer, yoga. I mean, all the things. She's an intuitive guide. She is a transformational breath facilitator. When I tell you all the things, she's been on Tyra. She's been on the Today Show. She's been everywhere. I literally have one of her books right here, Raw Food for Everyone. I think I have all of Alissa's books. And anyway, so needless to say, she's the shit. And I said shit. Anyway, it's my podcast. I can curse if I want to. So pleased and honored to have you, Alissa. How are you?
Thank you. I'm great. Thank you for that beautiful introduction.
You are so welcome. And I was trying to think. Like, how long have I known of you? And it's been a while. I actually should have searched through my emails. It's been a long time. Yes. But I'm going to share the story really quickly. It was 2010. I learned about raw vegan food and the healing benefits of raw vegan foods. And so that's where my journey kind of started with raw vegan. And then, so from 2010, and I'm not sure when I learned of you, I don't know how I learned of you, but I somehow was on your email distribution list. And so I would get emails from you, and you would have these raw food certifications. Inevitably, because at that point in time, I was traveling all over the country with my project management consulting business. And whenever you would have them, I was never around. I was always somewhere else. And I was like, golly, if ever I could, just attend. And then one day in 2018, and this is actually all kind of magical, because I remember before this one day, my husband and I were on vacation in Jamaica, and I was sitting on the balcony, and I remember, I was thinking, I had amassed quite a bit of knowledge around raw vegan. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this knowledge? Like, I've learned a lot of stuff. Is this just for me? And if it's just for me, that's cool. But I feel like it's not. Should I be sharing this? I don't know. And then what happens is I sat there and I said, what am I supposed to be doing with this? I get a ding on my phone, and it's a notification, right? Two notifications. One of the notifications says there's this Houston raw vegan meetup group that the facilitator stepped down. So they're looking for a facilitator to step in. Otherwise, they're going to dismantle the group. And I'm like, well, damn, I just asked, like, what am I supposed to do with this? Wait, the next email. So it was a ding notifying me, right, that I had email. I look, guess what? Alissa Cohen is offering a raw vegan certification. And I'm actually going to be in town. I'm like, oh my freaking goodness. Are you freaking kidding me? And I remember I flew home. Well, I emailed the meetup people. And anyway, so I inherited this group of people who are already interested in raw vegan food, right? I get home, I'm looking at the email, and then I'm like, oh God, should I register? And I called my friend. She was like, is this the lady you've been trying to like connect with? I'm like, yeah, for all these years. She's like, get off the phone with me, book your ticket. I'm like, okay, bye.
I never knew that. You didn't tell me that.
I never told you that. Yeah, it was kind of a long story, but anyway. And then so signed up. It was like the last certification. I think the last large, like 3-day certification you were doing for raw vegan and our living on live food certification. And signed up, booked my ticket right then and there. And I'm like, oh, it's happening. And so anyway, so thank you. So thank you.
Yeah, I never knew that story.
Yeah. I've been following you for years and just never could make it happen because of the timing. But it's always divine timing, which leads us right into really spiritual healing. So
yeah.
So how did this come to be? I would love to hear kind of your transition, or not even transition, but your journey to raw vegan, how that even happened, and then the evolution that's occurred since then to more energy healing and that type of thing.
Yeah, I love that question because actually the spiritual healing was what I've been doing for almost 40 years, like 38 years.
Wow.
Because, I went to polarity school when I was like 18, 19.
What?
I went, and nobody, back then, nobody had heard of that. Nobody knew what I was talking about, even cranio-sacral and the shamanic stuff. And I was doing all of that. And nobody really knew what it was. The consciousness was completely different. But I mean, even 10 years ago, but
for sure.
Then people thought I was crazy. So, and I was always into fitness and health. And so I would weave that in because they're all connected, right? And I know we're going to talk more about that. And so when I was doing the spiritual stuff, which I was doing a little of, I started talking to people about food and healing their bodies and working out. And that was something people could hook onto and understand much easier. So that's kind of how that started. And I just kind of exploded with that. I worked with people individually, and I had one of my clients in Palm Desert. I went out, I think I stayed with her for about 5 days, and she lost a ton of weight. We were eating tons of food and just having fun and playing. And she said, you have to write a book on what you did with me. I'm healing myself and losing weight, and it's easy. And so that I wrote a book, and then, I was on TV. And so it just kind of exploded because that's everyone's into.
I was looking for my other book. I'm sorry. I was like, because as you mentioned the one book, I'm like, I have all of your books, and they're usually pretty handy because I reference them all the time. So
that's how I just got known. So I kind of went with it. But in the certification classes that I did for about 15 years, I would always weave in the spiritual stuff. So people thought they were coming to a raw food class. And by the end of 4 days, on the fourth day, they would say to me, wait, I thought we were coming for raw food. But in the morning, I would always say, okay, this is a teacher training, learning readiness. I'm ready to teach, but you may not be ready to learn. Let's go around the room and see what's bubbling up, because before I fill your head with information, I want to make sure you're ready to learn. Right. So people would say what's coming up. They were maybe worried about their sick parent at home, or their job, or their kids, and I would end up processing them. And we would go around the room, and people would be crying, and all this stuff would come out, and I'd talk about their compelling vision. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I did.
Around the room, and we would talk about compelling, and I would take half the day to do that during the certification, and then we would do the raw food. But for me, it's all tied in.
Yeah.
Food and what you eat and how you treat yourself it's all tied in. It's like you can't sit down and meditate if you're full of sugar and you want to, you need to run it off. You're not going to be calm and centered to tap in, and vice versa. So, if you're not centered and you're not in alignment, you're not going to eat healthy and take care of yourself. So it's all connected for me. So that's what I used to teach. And I did it under, like, I would teach spirituality under the guise of raw food, I would always say. But people would leave there and say, oh my God, my life has completely changed. I just realized what I want to do with my life, because I would talk to people about their compelling vision and how to go about that and the steps that they need to take. And I would have people stand up, if you remember, in the middle of class and tell their story. And then
That was so much fun. I do remember that.
Yeah, it was really magical. The whole class was fighting and helping each other. And so that was always my passion, along with the food. But long story short, I never felt like, I always felt like the food was easier to reach people with. But then I gave myself a concussion in 2017, and it was bad. I was on the couch for like 8 months.
Wow.
Yeah. And I, always think everything happens for a reason. Sure. And the first thing I thought was, why did I create this?
Yeah.
And, it took me a while to get to it, but I realized it was like hiding the spiritual part of me, hiding that side of me that was my true path. And I was starting to get out of alignment because I was doing the raw food, but I opened an apothecary under my house. I opened an art studio, an art gallery, which I love. And that's all part of me, right? We don't have to be one-dimensional human beings, but
not.
But that was really the part that I was hiding for some reason. I don't know if it was the past tapes or past, this
programming. Yeah. And I think also though, not to justify, but to your point of what you were saying earlier, I think now we're in an age of consciousness, right? We're really awakening. And I think, now people are more receptive, but like you said, in back, 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago,
right.
Yeah, I don't know that you really could openly, talk about spirituality and elevated consciousness and awareness and neuroplasticity and just all the things as freely as you can now. And people actually get it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I was already on this track of it's easier to reach people through food and nutrition and stuff. Yeah. So it was a switch for me. And at that point, I kind of boxed myself in, right? I know you talk about entrepreneurship and it's an interesting thing because I used to say to a friend of mine, it's almost easier to create yourself when you're out of nothing. It's harder to, I felt like it was harder to switch when I already have this persona that I had out there to shift that and to create a new. So I had that going on too. And then the concussion came and I was like, okay, I need to, this is what I teach. And I really need to walk my talk and really, switch gears and put this out there. So that's when that was kind of the turning point for the spiritual stuff. And I've always had individual clients that I work with. I work one-on-one with people where we go super deep. I like working with people who are really ready to shift and really do the deep, deep work, like the inner child, adolescent, negative ego, but really go deep with it. Yeah. And I can see, I work intuitively and psychically where I can see the threads. So I can follow that super deep and really clear out all those blockages and all the stuff from the past that's holding people back. And I've always done that, but I've never put it out there. So concussion is when I started doing that.
Well, you had to be concussed in order to, in order for it to come out.
I'm telling the universe, I don't need to be hit that hard to get it.
Oh my gosh. Wow. That's so interesting. You said something that I want to go back to. You said, sometimes, or you felt in your own lived experience that it was easier for you to create something out of nothing. So you didn't have a business, you didn't have a persona, you didn't have a brand. And so you created a brand, the brand of, raw vegan. Well, anyway, you create a raw vegan brand, right? And being an expert in that lane, and then pivoting and rebranding yourself. And so here's the one thing I just want to share with everyone that's listening is that, there will most definitely be a point in your business journey, in your entrepreneurial journey, where you do shift and where you rebrand, because it's the evolution of you as you're evolving as a person. You're inevitably you're going to want to bring that level of evolvement to the forefront. And so just to even so for you it was raw vegan and then more spirituality, raw vegan led, right? Then which morphed into spirituality led. And then for me, for instance, when I started my holistic health coaching, even the holistic health piece of it has morphed from where I was initially, because I was literally just teaching classes and certifications. And then that morphed into, I was like, I really want to go deeper. And so as I got more comfortable and confident and as I evolved, then I went, okay, I want to do coaching. I want to take people more on a journey and really be there to support them. And then again, a little morphing and shifting happened where clinicians just started showing up, nurses started showing up and said, oh my God, I would love to do what you're doing. Can you show me, how do you do that? And so then I had to do a total, not a complete rebrand, but I rebranded as the nurse, a business coach for nurses, specifically those wanting to create holistic health coaching businesses. And so I shared all that to say that a lot of times we get so caught up at the beginning, because now I work exclusively with, nurses, nurse practitioners, and physicians. And it's like, okay, but I want my tagline to be right. And my brand to be this. I'm like, it's going to change.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't totally, it is inevitably going to change.
Yeah. And, off of that, that's what I kept doing. Like, what's the umbrella? What's the tagline? And it was I kept seeing my website. What's the tagline? And I was doing all this other stuff, but I couldn't get it should be a tagline that showed, how do I bridge the gap? And how do I put everything under that one umbrella? And when I realized it was all, my stuff, of course, I just needed to step into that. And that's not that I thought,
that's it, Alissa, you just need to step into it.
Right. I just needed to step into that. And then the people started showing up. Yeah. Right. But it was all my are people going to think it's weird, or are people going to think, or
it's all our stuff.
Right. It's all our stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you're I truly believe when you're totally in alignment, then the people start showing up. Things are easy. So when people start businesses, I always say, not that there's not bumps in the road and okay, maybe I need to pivot and turn and figure that out. But if it keeps happening and there's bumps in the road, then okay, what's not in alignment? Where do you need to move? Maybe this isn't the right thing. It should be easy. When it's easy and in the flow, that's when it's right.
So true. So true. And just to kind of add another little layer to that, that's not to say if something seems challenging that that's not necessarily the direction you should go in, because what happens is whenever we are, and I was literally just sharing this with a group last week, whenever we are up against a growth edge, right? So whenever we're expanding out of our zone of familiarity or out of our comfort zone, there's going to be a little resistance there because we've not been there. There's going to be fear is going to do our ego is going to do every single thing to maintain its current sense of self and keep us in that circle. And so that's not to say when you start to feel a little resistance, and that's not to say, oh, well, this must not be the right direction. No, check in with yourself. Are you avoiding something? Is there fear coming up? Which oftentimes it is fear coming up.
Right.
And that's your opportunity for growth. Go ahead.
Right. And that's the work that I do. Is it fear? Is it resistance? Or is it truly that this isn't your path? That this isn't fun anymore, and you keep bumping up against these different and you're pushing through it because you think you should do it, or there's a reason. But then that's where you really need to know, that's where the work comes in, right? You need to know if it's fear, if it's the inner child, doing the same patterns, if it's negative ego, if it's whatever it is.
So true. Such an important distinction to make. I'm so glad that you even brought that up. And so you concussed, you laid on the couch. I don't know why I laughed. That's not even funny. Yeah. I laugh because you laugh, I guess. Yeah. But it was all for a reason. Really bring this spiritual healing piece to the forefront. And so tell us, tell us just a little bit more about spiritual healing, particularly as it pertains to nursepreneurs. So nurses transitioning into the healing space, holistic healing space.
Yeah. So for me, I feel and I've always felt like this, even when I started doing the raw food and everything, my belief is always that everything starts in the spiritual realm. Everything starts in the mental and emotional, right? And that's not to say, because people will say to me, well, I really do have have this issue. I have a concussion. I have a broken shoulder, I have whatever, right? That's, it absolutely.
That's a physical manifestation.
That's the physical manifestation, though, when it goes too long or when it manifests in the physical body after you haven't been dealing with the spiritual, mental, emotional stuff.
Yeah.
So for me, there's always a spiritual reason why something happens. And that's why I'm always, my friends give me a hard time because I'm always like, why do you think you created that? Why do you think, whether it's like I drop a bowl or I slip on, break my shoulder, which I just did 3 months ago. I mean, the first thing that I did, I slipped, fell on my floor, and I literally opened my eyes and thought, okay, what's this about? Like, why did I create this? First thought before I even got up and knew I broke my shoulder, because I know, and I can trace it back because I started yet another business, a nutrition business, which is amazing, but I was going 100,000 miles an hour. And I got the messages. I had heart palpitations for like a week before. And
what?
And I don't have anxiety. I'm not prone to that. I was like, okay, I think I'm going a little too fast. And then my foot started hurting from this old like nerve condition, which never happens unless I'm unbelievably stressed. But I was like, I can handle it. I can handle it.
You're ignoring the signs that your body is trying to. Yeah.
Even though I knew, but, and, I've done this work for 40 something years, right? But I was like, it's okay. I'm just going to finish. I can't stop now. I'm on a roll and I'm, exploding. And then the shoulder. And I thought, okay, my higher self was like, hey. And I was ignoring it. So they were like,
okay, you know what? Bam.
Yeah, not to hurt me, but I was about to do something. I was about to travel and it was not in alignment. And I knew it, but it was like, and after this happened, I was like, wow, I can't believe. And I did, I'm pretty tapped in. So I was like, I knew it, but I didn't listen. The human side of me took over. So, when you talk about nurses, and for me, like nurses who are doing more of the spiritual work and going down the holistic path, that for me, I think when you're a nurse or a doctor, not that, that there's not, the spirituality isn't there beforehand, but it's all about the physical, right?
Right.
And for me, it's the other, you start in the mental and emotional and spiritual healing. When you clear up that stuff, the physical does clear up, because I have seen that time and time again with, the raw food and everything. Great. Like people have healed themselves, but the condition keeps coming back until you go into the root of the issue that was causing the problem in the first place. The mental and emotional stuff.
It's so true. So true. And I think you have to be, you have to be at a place where you're ready to receive that. But here's the thing, whether you're ready to receive it or not, the truth is truth.
Right.
It is the truth. And I think we all come to it in our own time. Yeah. But it's so powerful to understand that all physical manifestation, let me say it differently, all ailments, let's say ailments, are just they're physical manifestations of what's happening emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And like you said, once we work on that piece, look at it, miraculously.
And I want to say something else about that, because people have said to me in the past, well, that it feels like you're blaming people who have physical ailments. It feels like a blame. And I think it's not a blame. I mean, how amazing. Like, to me, that's so empowering. That I created that. And now I can change that. If I feel like, I didn't create that and it just happened to me, then I can't change it. I'm a victim.
You're a victim. Yeah.
If I think, why did I create that? I think that with everything, every 20 times a day, like, why did I just create? Oh, that's fascinating. Why did I create that person saying that to me? Why did I just create what I just saw outside?
Yeah.
Why did I create this, whatever is going on?
Yeah.
Then I love it. Because then I can change it and I can go in and figure out like, oh yeah, okay, this is where it's coming from, and I can follow the root. And
Yeah, no, so good. And it as you were speaking, so many things like popped up while you were speaking, and I couldn't write them down fast enough. But one of the things that popped up is, really understanding that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And so, but understanding first that we're spiritual beings. And so that's where everything starts. Yeah. Going back to that as the foundational piece. Yeah. And then the other thing that came up for me as you were speaking is that, it's radical personal responsibility, taking radical personal responsibility, understanding that we are the cause and we are also the effects. Like we are the problem, but we're the solution. And I agree, Alissa, that is so freaking empowering.
Yeah. Yeah.
So much better than, oh my God, this happened to me and I don't know why, and woe is me and I can't. So now I just have to be sick or whatever, for, if that means that's what you choose.
Right.
If that's what you choose to be. But I feel like I said, it's so empowering to understand I am the cause and I am the effect. I am the problem, which means I am, and I am also the solution. Yes. I am my own guru.
Yes.
Not that you don't need support from other people. Of course, you need support to navigate through all this. Sure. But I think first having the awareness of it is the first piece.
Yeah.
And so now this is so good.
Yeah.
Such a good, juicy conversation. And so I know it's like, this is not a conversation you can have with everybody.
I love it. This is my favorite thing to talk about.
Me too. Me too. It's so funny when I run into nurses, like, somehow if people find me online or whatever, and then we were talking, like, I didn't know there were nurses out there like you. I'm like, yes, there are people, not just nurses, there are people like us out there. And so it's always beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's really cool that consciousness is changing.
Yes.
So I do think it's cool that nurses and doctors and, people that maybe just treated the body as the physical are now way more aware that there is more. So it's very cool.
So cool. Yeah. And so now I know you mentioned you work one-on-one with clients, really helping them the process.
Say that again.
I'm sorry. I said, I know that you work one-on-one with clients, really helping them to process and whether it's, inner child or whatever the modality is, healing is the ultimate goal. Yeah. Healing is the ultimate goal. And, this is what I was going to say before I even finish that question. Going back to what you were saying about branding and shifting and kind of creating something after something was already created. Mm-hmm. This is what I've learned. And even I can even test this from my own experience. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing, you are the brand. Yeah. And so, I think sometimes we can get all in our head that people are attracted to us because of this one thing. And it's not just because of that one thing. It's because of who you are. Yeah. And so as it relates to like you and I, my introduction to you was from the raw vegan perspective. And then when I came for the certification and we did do the whole stepping into compelling vision, that was so much fun and that was so powerful. And we're still connected. Even like with at the time when I met you back in 2018, I wasn't really into crystals. I didn't really know much of crystals. I love crystals now. Like again, going back to that evolving, but it's because of who you are as the person. And so I just really want to emphasize that because we are the brand. You are the brand. Those of you who are listening, you are the brand. And we hear this all the time and it sounds like a cliche, but it's really, really true. Your vibe attracts your tribe. And so I was vibing with Alissa in the raw vegan world. I'm vibing with Alissa in the spiritual healing world, the crystals, the energy healing, all of that. And so I share that with you to really, when I say with you, I mean, it's those of you that are listening or even watching for that matter, people are attracted to you and who you are and your essence. And that's why it's so really so important to really show up in owning who you are and showing up in your true authenticity, because that's what people are attracted to. So if tomorrow you decide you want to sell widgets, guess what? They're going to be like, oh my God, she sells widgets. I want her widget.
And I tell a quick story because this changed my life years ago. So when I was 22, I opened a health food store around here. And a friend of mine came in, and I mean, that was like 30 something years ago. Mm-hmm. And so Whole Foods, and there was nothing like that around. And up at one of the malls here, not that far, like a half an hour away, Wild Oats was opening. And I was all like, and I had a little tiny, really cute little health food store in this area and in one of the little towns here. And I was talking to a friend of mine came in and I said, I'm really nervous because why would people come here and they're going to go up there and they're going to take all my business and blah, blah, blah. And he said to me, why do you think people come here? And I said, well, to buy supplements and food. And he said, no, they don't. He said, they come here for the essence of who you are.
Yeah.
And I used to have a little desk with a chair and people used to come in all the time and sit and hang out. And I'd do some healings. And he said, people come in here for who you are. Yep. They can get supplements and food anywhere. They come in for your energy and what that energy does and how it fills them up for the day, whether it's something you say or it's not even what you really say. It's the energy of
your energy.
Feel it. And that's what you're talking about. But it just always reminds me of that. And it really, the way he said it to me just shifted my perspective. I mean, I was 22 and I'll never forget that. And I use that when I would do my certifications, I would say, why do you think I would have people stand up and say what they want to do, whether they want to write a book or open a healing center. And I would do, I don't know if you remember the money lecture, I would do at least one or two people during that time would get that. And I would say, what do you want to do? And they'd say, I want to write a book. And then I would say, okay, how much are you selling the book for? And,
oh, yes, I remember this. Yes.
And I'd say, okay, who wants to buy the book? And I would say, this is for real. If you don't want to buy the book, I'm not your third grade teacher. I don't need to know the reason why. You make another choice, but get up and get your money. And they would make $500 right away. And they would say, no, I can't take this. And I would say, you don't have to, but I'd invite you to have a different experience.
Yeah.
And I would say, these people just met you yesterday. They don't even really know what the book is. You spent 5 minutes talking about it. They're paying you for the essence of who you are because they're feeling your heart when you're speaking about this. Yep. So the energy piece, even if you're not aware of it, that's what, like you said, your vibe attracts your tribe. So it's so true. And I always remember my friend Paul saying that to me. It changed my life.
Yeah, that is so cool. Thanks for sharing that story. And I'm glad Paul said that.
I know.
Because it is so true. And there's so much power in proximity. I talk about that a lot, the power of proximity, but even people coming to your store, even if they have to drive 30 minutes, an hour, they would gladly do it to be in close proximity to you.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so same is true for you, those that are listening. People want to be in your space, not just because of what you do, but how they feel in your space, how you help them to either think higher or feel more expanded or just feel better, whatever the case may be. It's because of who you are, like the true essence of who you are. So own it. And I know I have conversations all the time with women and female clinicians, and oftentimes we haven't necessarily been giving permission, or we feel like we need permission to be all that we are, right? And really to embrace all sides of us. Like you even mentioned, the spiritual side, you were kind of like hiding and by way of raw vegan, which, hey, as long as you were doing it, but it's just interesting how we oftentimes aren't encouraged to really embrace ourselves in the fullest expression of ourselves. Yeah.
For sure.
So this has been good. Any closing words? Like what would you share? What would you like to share? Again, as it relates to, I was going to say spiritual healing, but in general, whatever's coming up for you that maybe we haven't covered today.
For some reason, what just popped in is like being in the flow. And it kind of has to do with what we started to talk about before about when you bump up against things. There's always going to be things like when you're going towards your dream, you're going to bump up, right? Because of resistance, like you were talking about fear and stuff like that. But really, that's not the reason to quit, but really finding what your path is by being open to switch. Like you said, it's normal we're not one-dimensional human beings, right? So there's going to be a lot of things that we're interested in. If we can just flow and be in the moment, like that's what I've been practicing for the last 10 years. It's one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, right? And because I'm a high energy person, type it, right?
Yeah.
Being in the flow and listening, and that will always lead you to the path.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Which brings up something that it's when you say, being in the flow, it's really tapping into that feminine energy. And what's been, I think, most pervasive, particularly in business, is really operating from a very masculine energy perspective.
Right.
And so it's for some, it's not easy to kind of shift. What do you mean ease and flow? When I say ease, I mean, I not really mean, when I say I built my business from a place of ease and flow, I mean that. Yeah. And when it doesn't feel like it's ease and flow, I know that I'm out of alignment and I got to kind of check back in with myself. But for some people, that's foreign language. Like, what do you mean? No, you got to make it happen. I'm like, I mean, you can make it happen.
Right.
But there's a whole another way of creating. And that's really by tapping into that feminine energy.
Yes. And when you say feminine energy, my whole life, even when I was a little kid, I would switch directions and I would do so. And, as I got older and started creating businesses and people would say, oh my God, you're doing something different. You're changing your mind. And I used to be, I didn't like when people said that, but now I love it. Now I'm like, yep, changing my mind. Like, what is wrong with that? We've just been taught like to, learn this, go to school, do one thing. And when you're in the flow, it's a lot, you got to practice listening to that, listening to your, listening to the flow.
Definitely
but
practice.
Life becomes not just the job or the work that you choose, but life in general becomes way easier when you're in the flow and tuned in and tapped in and you really listen to that intuition, even when it doesn't make sense. That's the hardest
That's the hardest part.
Right. When it doesn't make sense, but to listen. And whenever I listen and to trust. Yeah. And the more you do it, the more it gets to be second nature.
Does. Yeah. What are the ways that you kind of drop in? Like, so if you find that you mentioned about, like really tuning in, checking in, listening to yourself, listening to your intuition. Do you have some particular practices that you can share that help you to kind of drop back in?
Yeah. So when I work with people and they really want to tune in and get more intuitive and listen to themselves, I always, meditation, of course, right? Because that tunes out. And a lot of people, it is hard for a lot of people to quiet that mind, to tune it. You can start to hear the real thoughts and your thoughts, the outside noise. So of course, meditation. And then I have like a little practice I tell people to do when people are like, well, like I'm working with a client now who she is really tapped in, but she doesn't trust it. She doesn't trust her. So I tell her to get in the car and just drive. And I do this still a lot of the times. Like I'll get a hit to go. And I'm like, why am I supposed to go to the health food store? I was just there, last night. I don't really need anything, but I follow it because you never know what's going to show up. Right.
It's always magical.
It's always magical. Yeah. And it's one of my, I do it at least once a day. I'm like, oh, I'm going out. Like, friends will say, where are you going? I'm like, I don't know, but who knows where I'll end up. But I tell people to do this when they need to learn how to follow their intuition. Go for a ride and ask and get out of your head, bring the energy into your heart and try to, and it's going to take practice to do. Your brain is going to be like, I'm not going down there. That's like a weird area. I'm going to end up at the ocean. Right. But listen to your intuition, like take a left. Okay, I'm going to take a left. Follow it. And then all of a sudden you see, something like, I don't know why I'm thinking of this. I found these old fashioned windows that this house was throwing out and I grabbed them because I wanted to do some painting on them. And I was like, well, that was weird. Of course I found these at the perfect time. I was just thinking about doing some painting again. Right. So, stuff like that, or you'll meet someone or you'll find this little place that you've wanted to go. You'll find things will show up. And then you're like, your intuition, then your mind is like, okay, I followed the right path. So it's training for your intuition. It's just a good kind of
so good.
Yeah, just do that every day and see where it leads you.
I love that. I love that. That's so good. And, you know, I think, well, as clinicians, you know, we definitely are overanalyze. Oh, you know, we've been trained to analyze and overanalyze because, I mean, in medicine, you know, it could be the difference between life and death.
Right.
Not so much in business, right? No one's going to die if you decide one thing in business. But it's learning or retraining yourself to trust.
Absolutely. Because
and to release that, the fictitious, I mean, we think we're in control. We're not in control of anything. Right. But it's releasing the sense of control and just allow it. Just go with the flow.
Right.
That's when you don't have
it's a practice.
It's a practice. Oh my gosh.
Into your heart space, right? Because then we'll always go back to our head, or it makes sense on paper.
Yeah.
But, so it's a training to get
it definitely is. It definitely is. And as you were sharing your story, it reminded me of a instance where, like, pretty much every morning I'll wake up and there's two different routes. I'll go walking and there's two different routes that I'll, you know, depending on when I walk out of the house, I'm like, I'm going left, or sometimes I'll go right. But bottom line is there's two routes. Well, this one particular day I was, and that's just what I do, because I know how long it's going to take me to go around, you know, one way or the other way. Now I'm usually like, okay, after this, and I do this. Right. And we're creatures of habits, right? Yeah. And I remember I walked out of the house and I'm like, I don't go left or right. Like, I'm going to go to the park. And then my analytical mind was like, it's going to take you 10 minutes to drive. Then you got to park. Then you're going to walk an hour. Then you got to drive back. And now you've blown your timeline. And I'm like, it was so compelling for me to go to the park, to walk in the park. And I'm like, I'm going with it. It's going to blow my timeline. It wasn't like I had to move appointments or anything, but you know, we all have our idea of how we want our day structured. And so drove to the park, got to the park, walked around, ended up sitting on this bench, and got the most, I won't even share what it is right now, but got the most beautiful download. But I had to be there.
Yes.
I had to
be
there.
Yes.
Otherwise I wouldn't have, it wouldn't have been an experience.
Right. And that's what I was saying. You don't know what it is. So on paper, it's like, why am I going this way? Why don't I just go the typical route to the health food store that I go? Yeah. But if it's telling, if your gut is feeling it, go. And you don't always know what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So big things coming. Just going to share that. But moral to that story is just trust that nudge. When you feel that nudge, know that you can trust it and trust the nudge, even if you can't make sense of it intellectually.
Right. And then and the more you trust it, the more you do it, the more it happens. And the more then you realize, like, okay, when I do trust it, it works out. So
and beautiful training and just in learning how to trust yourself, because most of us don't trust ourselves.
Right.
That's why we're oftentimes sitting on a fence. Like, should I start I want to do this, even though our heart's pulling us towards it, but our mind is like, but no, you know. And so so beautiful practice. Well, thank you for sharing that. Sharing that with us, and thank you for all the insights you shared today. This has been, like I said, it's always beautiful to have this level of conversation. So yes. So if people are listening, they're like, oh my gosh, how can I get in touch with this lady? Like, how do I find her? Where can people find you, Alissa?
You can find me on my website at AlissaCohen.com. It's ALISSACOHEN.com. And I do a Tuesday night healing. It's by donation. You just lay back. A lot of people are in bed or on the couch. And that's a really great way to start, feel the energy. There's a lot of miracles happen on Tuesday nights. And I do individual sessions, and I have a bunch of stuff on there. So
super cool. I will. I'll make sure that the team links your website down below in the show notes. And just a little plug for the Tuesday healing. So remember, I had COVID a couple of years ago, which was and you know, that whole time, going back to something you said earlier, like, okay, why did I create this? Why did I create this? And for the life, even when I was in the hospital for those 8 days, the whole time I was like, why did I create this? Like, but I couldn't come up with anything, which is driving me nuts. And then when I got home, I'm still, why did I create this? And finally, it came to me much, 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 much later. But during that time, I did attend some of the Tuesday night energy healings, and they were so wonderful. And just beautiful experiences. And I mean, I was still on oxygen. Do you remember that? I turned my camera off, so I'm like, I don't want anybody to freak out because I'm wearing oxygen.
I remember.
Yeah, but it was definitely very healing, very helpful. And so just thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So that being said, you guys, this has been just another fabulous episode. Thank you, Alissa, again for all of your time.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me. This was so much fun talking.
It was indeed. And for all my listeners, as always, I love you guys. I appreciate you. And I'm so, so very grateful for you joining me every week for another episode. And so I'll see y'all next week for another transformative episode of The Sharice Williams Show. Bye for now.